Michael Corleone is nothing like his father, Vito Corleone, and this contrast is what makes The Godfather one of the most powerful and tragic stories in cinematic history. Vito Corleone was a man who understood power, but more importantly, he understood people. He ruled not merely through fear or intimidation, but through respect, loyalty, and the cultivation of trust. He built relationships and maintained them with careful attention. Even as a powerful crime boss, he never lost his humanity, never allowed his empire to define his moral compass, and always prioritized his family's safety and unity. Vito knew that authority was most effective when paired with fairness and personal connection. He was a man whose reputation alone commanded respect, a man whose calm demeanor hid a brilliant strategic mind. People both feared and admired him, and that duality gave him a unique strength. He understood that power without humanity, without connection, was meaningless, and every action he took reinforced his legacy as both a leader and a father. Michael Corleone, in comparison, begins the story as an outsider. He is educated, ambitious, and initially idealistic, a man who wants nothing to do with the family business. He represents hope that the Corleone family might someday escape the violent cycle in which Vito operates. He is principled, thoughtful, and determined to live a life separate from crime. But life has other plans. A threat to his father, a violent attack, and a series of escalating events gradually pull him into the world he had once rejected. Michael's journey is slow, almost imperceptible at first, but inexorable. He starts as the reluctant son, but circumstances, loyalty, and ambition push him toward a path he never intended to take. Unlike Vito, who maintains control while staying connected to his family, Michael increasingly relies on fear and secrecy. His intelligence and strategic thinking allow him to outmaneuver opponents, but they also isolate him emotionally from everyone around him. The transformation of Michael is heartbreaking because it is so thorough. Every decision he makes, even those intended to protect the family, further distances him from the people he loves. Kay, his wife, becomes increasingly alienated as she witnesses Michael becoming colder and more ruthless. Fredo, his brother, becomes a tragic casualty, destroyed not by external enemies, but by Michael's own actions. Michael's children grow up in an environment ruled by fear and secrecy, rather than trust and warmth. In the end, Michael gains the power, control, and legacy he desired, but he pays the ultimate price. He loses his soul, his family, and his humanity. He achieves the external trappings of success, but is left utterly alone, a man surrounded by wealth and authority, yet completely isolated. The contrast between Vito and Michael is stark and central to the narrative. Vito commands respect because people trust him and admire him. Michael commands fear because people must obey him or face consequences. Vito builds loyalty and relationships. Michael isolates himself, suspicious of everyone and everything. Vito's power is rooted in his empathy, his understanding of human nature, and his ability to inspire devotion. Michael's power, by contrast, is rooted in strategy, cold calculation, and intimidation. While Vito's empire is defined by order and respect, Michael's is defined by paranoia, violence, and control. Every decision Michael makes in pursuit of protecting and consolidating power erodes the very foundation of the family that Vito built. The more Michael succeeds, the more isolated he becomes. The more he protects the empire, the more he destroys the emotional bonds that give life meaning. Michael's transformation is tragic because it's inevitable once he steps into the world of the family business. He starts with intelligence, moral grounding, and a sense of justice, but ambition, circumstance, and the corrupting influence of power gradually reshape him. Where Vito tempered his authority with wisdom and humanity, Michael sacrifices humanity for efficiency and dominance. The Godfather does not just tell a story about crime. It tells a story about the human condition, about how power and responsibility can reshape a person, about how good intentions can lead to devastating consequences. Michael's tragedy is not only that he becomes ruthless, but that he becomes something entirely different from what he intended to be. A man who has everything externally, but has lost what matters most internally. The story emphasizes the differences between father and son to explore themes of morality, family, power, and the human cost of ambition. Vito's leadership style was inclusive, strategic, and compassionate. Michael's is isolating, calculating, and ultimately destructive. This contrast allows the audience to reflect on how circumstances, choices, and personal ambition can change a person profoundly. Michael's journey shows that intelligence and ambition alone cannot protect someone from tragedy. Without empathy and connection, power itself becomes a prison. Michael Corleone becomes an anti-hero whose brilliance is inseparable from his downfall. He achieves greatness, but at the cost of his humanity, mirroring the classical tragic hero, a man whose own qualities lead to his ultimate isolation. The tragedy is amplified because the audience sees the potential Michael once had, the life he could have lived, and the person he might have become. Unlike Vito, who maintained a delicate balance between power and humanity, Michael allows circumstances and ambition to consume him. He inherits an empire and yet becomes a prisoner of it. He achieves mastery over his enemies and rivals, but he loses mastery over his own life and relationships. This tension between external success and internal failure is what makes Michael Corleone one of the most compelling characters in cinematic history. Every scene, every choice, and every consequence in Michael's arc reinforces this central tragedy. He is the son of a great man, but becomes someone unrecognizable, isolated, and broken in pursuit of power. Ultimately, Michael Corleone's story is a study in contrast, consequence, and tragedy. It shows the danger of replacing respect with fear, empathy with calculation, and connection with isolation. Where Vito built an empire on trust, love, and loyalty, Michael builds an empire on intimidation, secrecy, and fear. Where Vito maintained balance and humanity, Michael sacrifices humanity for control. And where Vito's legacy inspired loyalty and admiration, Michael's legacy inspires isolation and sorrow. This contrast is not only central to the story of The Godfather, but it also speaks to the timeless human struggle between ambition, morality, and the costs of power. Michael Corleone may be brilliant, strategic, and unstoppable, but his brilliance is inseparable from his tragedy. In the end, he has everything a man could want, yet he loses what truly matters: love, trust, family, and peace of mind, making him one of the most unforgettable and tragic anti-heroes in film history.